in this episode of the Critical Oxygen Podcast.
Fear is designed to protect you. It's coming from somewhere. That's why I'm normalizing it. There's the acceptance piece in that, that exists. It is there. Anxiety is there to protect you. We want to make sure we don't step out of the cave and there is a saber-toothed tiger waiting for us there. We got to be ready for the saber-toothed tiger. So unfortunately, when we get to, where are we now? 2024. The saber-toothed tiger is not out there, but we still have these reactions and we still have that. And that's okay because it's still there to protect us.
Welcome to the Critical Oxygen Podcast, where we help you optimize your physiology and maximize your endurance potential. I'm your host, Phil Batterson. I have a PhD in molecular exercise physiology, and I'm the founder of Critical Oxygen, where my mission is to build better endurance athletes through remote education and in-person physiological testing. Today I'm joined by Neil Pallas, an ultra-running coach and psychotherapist, where we're going to talk about mental flexibility for endurance athletes. Neil is a licensed clinical social worker with dual training as a psychotherapist and mental performance coach. Neil lives and works in Longmont, Colorado, just outside of Boulder. As a therapist, he specializes in providing therapy to athletes who may be struggling with a range of life issues, from anxiety to depression, managing life stresses such as work and school, as well as athlete-specific issues surrounding injury, changing career, as well as struggles with coach and team dynamics. As a mental performance coach, Neil seeks to help athletes elevate and enhance performance through the development of psychological skills, as well as helping athletes overcome psychological challenges specific to sport and competition. Neil works with a range of athletes in different sports, but has a strong affinity to endurance and mountain sports. Neil is an accomplished marathon and ultra-endurance athlete and can often be found running and biking around Leadville, Colorado in the summer. Neil also wears a third hat as he coaches ultra-runners and marathoners for the Carmichael Training System. You can reach Neil at www.coloradopsychotherapyandsport.com or on Instagram at Colorado Psychotherapy and Sport. The links will be in the description. So I'm super excited for all of you to hear this conversation I had with Neil. Mental health and mental performance is something that has become a hot topic for me personally as of late. I became very interested in this during my PhD, where admittedly, I struggled with my mental health quite a bit. Now I'm trying to take what I learned from that and apply it into life to optimize my mental performance in all situations. And the beauty of this is that mental flexibility during endurance performance can really be used in all other aspects of life. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Neil Pallas about maximizing your mental performance. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Phil, for having me. This is going to be good fun. This is a new podcast for me. So
yeah. And relatively new podcast in general. So I appreciate you coming on, giving me a shot.
Awesome.
Being able to potentially come on, talk to us about your expertise and those sort of things. And we were just kind of talking offline of like, you're like, oh, have you heard me on the Coopcast and like other things like that? And I'll claim ignorance, but I also think that will make for probably a more fun interview because I'm not, hopefully, not going to ask the same questions that other people ask.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think you will. But I'm looking forward to your questions.
It'll be fun.
Good. So, well, what do you want to know?
Yeah. So we can first let's just I like to give people a little bit of a background. So I think I think I heard of you on my Instagram because what's your business name? It's like Colorado Psychotherapy and something.
Colorado Psychotherapy and Sport Performance.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I probably followed you at some point, or maybe I can't remember. Maybe you followed me after the CTS thing.
Yeah. No, actually what happened was my sister, who's an athlete, she's running, she actually just ran Tokyo the other day, Tokyo Marathon. And she was like, well, have you listened to this podcast? Because I'm interested, I love the science of running as well. And in addition to my own company, I work as a coach for CTS. And so I love putting it all together. And like you and I were talking offline just a minute ago, it's just learning. That's what I love, you know, and so. We're listening. You know, she said, "Well, have you listened to this podcast?" And it was with Jason Fitzgerald.
Yep.
And so I was, "Oh yeah, that's great." And I started listening to that and got something. And then I followed you on your Instagram right after that. That's how I found you.
Okay, that's where it was, because then I probably started poking through your Instagram and was like, "Oh, that's always something that I feel like I don't have enough information about." Is like. You know, kind of like sports psychology and psychotherapy and other things like that, and kind of just like the mental tools and the mental components that go into, you know, just performing your best on any given day. Yeah. So I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to get Neil on because that's what I want to learn about right now. So I reached out to you, and you were, you know, you graciously said yes.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So, yeah.
So yeah, if you want to just give everybody a little bit of an introduction, you know, who is Neil? What do you do? Why'd you get into kind of like psychotherapy and wanting to, you know, merge it with sports performance?
So, it's a long background here.
It's okay. We got some time. This is what podcasts are for.
So I had, for, you know, early part of my career, I worked outside. I taught backpacking and rock climbing and mountaineering. Cool. I was a guide. I was an instructor for a program called Outward Bound in both California and Oregon and eventually Colorado.
I've heard of them, yeah.
And I loved taking people outside and having them go through a challenging experience, adversity, and come out the other side of that with a lot more skills, a lot more self-confidence, a lot more belief in themselves, a lot more ability to work as a team. And for myself, when I took an Outward Bound course when I was 17, it was life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing. And so I did that for a number of years through the 90s and even into the mid 2000s, 2007, I think was my last course that I worked. Long before, during that period, I was like, well, what else am I going to do with my life? You know, this is seasonal, and, there's some people that'll do that as their full-time careers, but I really wanted something a little bit, more stable. And I was like, I should go to become a therapist. And I decided social work was a route to go. I'll be honest, my mom was a social worker. And I was like, well, this is interesting. You could be a psychotherapist. And there's a lot of different directions a social worker could go. They could, a lot of people may think immediately of the social worker who works with children in their homes or dealing with doing case management, or a lot of them become psychotherapists. In fact, most of the psychotherapists in this country, most mental health is done by clinical social workers. And so that's something that people don't know. They immediately go to a psychologist or they think psychologist, but it's actually, everyone has their own function, different roles and different views on it. But as a clinical social worker, you could practice psychotherapy. And it's all in your training. Where did you get your training? How did you get trained? And who you're supervised by, that's how you develop those skills as a psychotherapist. So there's a lot of different routes to that. So I was like, social work's a good one. I went back from working in the woods to Chicago, to downtown Chicago, where I went to my training, and eventually moved out here to Colorado. I'm just outside of Boulder.
Awesome. And I lived in Colorado Springs for 2 years doing my master's degree.
Awesome.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, and it's an incredible place, and obviously a very athletic community. Now, here's where the athlete part of this comes in. Now, way back when I was taking this Outward Bound course, back when I was in high school, I asked myself, well, what are these skills that get you to the top of the mountain? Not just physical skills. There's a mental, emotional component. What was that? And even I left high school writing a paper on the psychology of mountaineering, not even knowing that I would go into this years and years later. Had always had an interest, but I was like, okay, I've got this, I'm going this route. And finally, a program opened up in applied sports psychology at Adams State University here in Colorado, and decided, hey, I'm going to, that was in 2016, I'm going to finally do this. And it was, something that I could afford at that time. And I was like, all right, I dove into it and haven't turned back. And it's just absolutely love. So I have two hats, two directions I go in my practice. One is as a psychotherapist. I work with athletes who have mental health needs, who may be struggling with anxiety, some that may have been injured and struggling with an injury, and how to deal with the sadness and depression and grief and all that stuff that comes with that. Then I have the performance side is, okay, I've got this race I'm doing. I'm working with a lot of high school track athletes right now, and they're getting ready to actually nationals. I think is this weekend in New York, and they're getting ready for this. And it's like, how do I refocus on my performance? How do I, instead of getting caught up in my thoughts, how do I refocus that? Or it could be an ultra runner. If you think they're going 100 miles and trying to help them prevent from stopping. What's in their mind, I just want to stop. I don't want to do this anymore. Or how can I maintain my focus? I think some of the best ultra runners, best endurance athletes in the world are able to maintain focus and stay focused continuously in spite of all that stuff that's going on. And so that's what I really dig into. I love both sides of that. And how do I help athletes be fully human, just absorb this, like, all right, it's not just about being an athlete. It's about everything else that comes with that.
That's awesome. I resonate on so many different levels of that, because during my PhD, or actually, so before my PhD, when I was doing my master's degree and everything like that, I was like kind of what I would envision is kind of like the epitome of health. Like I was going to the incline every weekend, and I was hiking that. Like I think I got up to like 3 times with like a 60-pound pack on my back, like other things like that. I was super, super fit. I didn't really have many things I was like training for, but like just like the pursuit of, kind of being better was like what I was training for. Yeah. And I got to my PhD, and that's just like a different level of stress, like the requirements of the work to do and like other things like that. So exercise and staying fit kind of took a back seat. But then at the same time, I also started to I started to pursue CrossFit a little bit, and probably push myself just because it's like CrossFit's a little bit ego driven, especially when you go to a class with your buddies and you like want to beat them. And one of your buddies is 220 pounds and can deadlift 500 pounds. The other buddy is good at something else, and then you're like the the endurance athlete. So it's like, okay, it's like, oh, I got to beat him in these endurance workouts. So I started to slowly, like get injured there, shoulder injury, another injury, weird injuries and stuff, to the point where like I actually I messed up my back really bad. And I think it's based on I have a torn labrum in my hip. So I have a hip labrum tear, and it is amazing. Like the first connection I made was whenever I was injured, my mood, especially during an acute injury, was just awful. Like I was felt horrible. I wasn't exactly the nicest person to my now fiance, and like other things like that. So it was always something I recognized, and that's like hard. Yeah. But then I think like as an athlete as well, when your image comes from your ability to physically output things gets reduced, like. Totally. That is so hard to like, just mentally grasp. So yeah, I struggled a lot with that.
It's so common.
Yeah.
It's so common. And it's probably one of the things, even I think it was around 2007, 2008, which really started pushing me in this direction, was my own injury of an Achilles tendinopathy, or tendinosis, as you'll call it, and which I'm probably still struggling with a little bit. But it was this smackdown because I was trying to qualify for Boston. I wanted to get there, and my God, I was going to get there. And then all of a sudden, this identity was taken away. You know, it was like, I'm never going to get there, you know, and end of the world. It's like, wait a second. That's not, let's step back. And was able to, you know, first of all, work through that piece of it. And then also the physical piece of it is once you start unloading some of that, the mental component, some of that physical, in my experience, maybe, you know, it's not that case for everybody. Sometimes that physical component starts coming back a little bit, you know, unloading, you explained a period of time in your life that you had a lot of stress, a PhD going on, you know, and that's a mental load that I loved diving into that piece. It's like, wait a second, almost, I don't want to say every athlete, but a lot of athletes that I run into that have had physical injuries have had all this incredible stress in their lives. And, you know, we tend to negate that sometimes as an individual. Like, oh yeah, I'm fine. You know, I did great during COVID wasn't stressful. This whole period of, you know, whatever was going on in the world was totally stressful. You know? But sometimes it's way back in our unconscious, or it's not right in front of us, and then, why am I getting injured? Oh, okay, there's this other load that I'm taking on right now too. So
yeah, I liken it to, this is a grossly oversimplified way of looking at it, but like stress is a bucket, and the stress that you can take on is a certain size bucket, and you can change it with good practices, but generally speaking, the level of water that is filling up that bucket is fluctuating. It's going up and down based on life stress, physical stress, family stress, work stress, any sort of stresses. Those are the faucets.
Yep, absolutely.
You can have drains, right? You know, and the more drains you have, obviously, the better off you're at maintaining like those levels. And those drains come from, you know, like social situations that are not stressful, or, you know, being around loved ones, or like, for example, it was my fiance's birthday yesterday, and she loves riding horses. And I've been very, very kind of like, I don't know, babe, like, riding horses, that's not for me. I'd rather just like run next to you and stuff. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and we're going to have fun today. I'm going to ride the horse with you. And it was great. So that, from, you know, a stress perspective, that was releasing, you know, some of the stress. But I think what people don't realize is that you can only take on a finite amount of stress before your bucket starts to overflow. Right. And when your bucket starts to overflow, that's where I think the you know, like the mental health issues start to actually arise a little bit more poignantly. Oh, totally. Right? Like the anxiety, the depression, like other things like that. Totally. And it could be an acute stress, like hurting yourself, that then, you know, causes that overflow to happen. And then, you know, then you're trying to like dig yourself out of that hole. Yeah. And I'm still working on it. You know, I'm been 7 almost, I got June would be, so 9 months out of my PhD, and I'm still working on like the stress management aspect of things, of like not taking too much on, not taking too much athletic stuff on, because I'm like, oh, now I don't have any stress. I should be able to train and do all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, it's a slow process, right? Yeah. Of figuring out what the best drains are, and not bringing on more faucets if you don't have to, right?
And you know, I would think, you know, as a therapist, is probably my role is kind of help you to adjust a faucet and help you to put the holes in the bucket so you can drain a little bit. And so it could be a little bit smoother if you were to use that metaphor. That, you know, and definitely different roles as a therapist and as a mental performance coach, because I'm still helping them kind of to work on the faucet and work on the holes in the bucket. At the same time, our focus is, how do I enhance and elevate my performance? You know, how can, you know, that's, you know, my goal, you know, and especially with these dual hats that I wear, I like keeping one as kind of a coaching role, or is a coaching role, and one is a therapist role. Yeah.
So how do you, you know, like, what would be like a practical example, right, of how, you know, someone comes to you, they want you to be they want, you know, like a coach. What's something that you think you as a psychotherapist view differently than, say, like other coaches out there?
Oh, that's a good question. So as far as the mental performance piece, if someone was coming to me specifically for a race, so I'll have a lot of marathoners come to me. Sometimes it's within a couple of weeks of their marathon. I like if they can call me a couple months before the marathon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I could we could do a lot of work, because here's the deal, is it's very much like doing your intervals. Or doing your tempo, your tempo runs, or whatever, whatever you want to call it, whatever language you're using, but you have to practice. You have to practice. It can move quickly, or sometimes it can move pretty slowly, depending on what it is that you may be struggling with, or the blocks per se. But having some time. So people will come to me, hey, I've got this marathon, I'm worried that I'm going to drop out. That's, red flag. Okay, I'm concerned that I'm going to drop out, or I'm concerned I'm not going to run as fast as I would like to. All right. Well, let's talk about that. And the nice thing is, I also have this other hat that I kind of throw into my brain of like, I'm a coach, or I've been a coach. I am a coach, and I can't, a coach as far as the physical side of things. And so I could look at it and go, okay, what's realistic? What is their coach telling them? So, and that's what I want to know. Is their coach telling them, has strong belief that they can make it? Okay, great. Let's work with it. But more than that is, let's get your self-belief going. Let's work on that self-talk. Let's work on that image of you finishing that race. What are those blocks that are holding you back that we can help kind of peel back and let go of those blocks and do the thing that you're very capable of doing. And so it could be a marathoner. It could be, like I mentioned earlier, like an 800-meter runner who's getting to the starting line, and maybe they've got the first lap, and then they're just hanging on, and they, I don't know, should I go, should I not go? and before you know it, the race is over.
Right.
It's okay. How do you become assertive in those situations? Or, I like using assertive versus aggressive. People say, you got to be aggressive. How are you going to be assertive here? How are you going to use this mental fortitude to push yourself through this? What can you use? What skills can you use? Some of that could be self-talk. Some of it could be imagery. Some of it could be in how you prepare that day. But a lot of it comes back to is like that self-awareness. What's going on? What am I saying to myself? What am I doing as I get into this race, and and these folks are pulling away from me? What am I saying to myself right here, right now? And that has a lot to do with it. So those would be my mental performance folks coming to me.
Yeah. So it's trying to figure out what is going to be the best sort of case or situation, or no, what is the best sort of practice to flex, we'll say flex the bucket, right? Because you can make your bucket bigger.
Right.
So yeah, that's something that like you mentioned imagery there, and that is something that my high school cross country coaches would use for every single race.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it actually, there's very few things that I took away from, my high school coaching, but or my high school cross country experience. But if I were to actually become a coach, I would totally be like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to visualize the race.
Yeah.
And we're going to visualize where it's going to get hard, but you're not going to get worried, right? You've trained a lot, because this is the sort of mental, practice you need to be able to tell yourself, is you say, okay, well, if you've envisioned the course and you can kind of, set up scenarios where it's like, okay, well, I know that's a really steep climb, so, I need to pull back a little bit, or this is where it could get really hard because I've never run more than 17 miles during a training race, or something like that, right? That the imagery, especially because, at least from what I have seen and heard of it, is like the more you can put yourself into that situation, the less unknown there is. So the less what ifs / and I think the what ifs stem anxiety a little bit, right?
Or you can prepare for the what ifs and how you can emotionally. So sometimes, it's so normal, and I would love for every listener to hear this, is it's so normal to experience some of that anxiety. Every football player going into the Super Bowl was experiencing some anxiety. It's okay. You could still have this anxiety and perform well because you're redirecting your focus on those controllables. Okay. So even on like an imagery situation, you can go through that. Okay, that little struggle there. Okay, I'm they're pulling away from me a little bit. Feel that anxiety. Notice that anxiety. Okay, what do I need to do right now? I need to recommit. I need to, hey, kick it into gear. You got this. Let's see if we can pick it up a little bit here and move into that. And not, so respond versus react to that anxiety, because that anxiety is normal. That's going to happen wherever you go, whether you're running, the Leadville 100 or running an 800 meter at nationals, this, high school athlete running nationals this week. That is normal. It's how you respond to what's going on inside and what's going on outside. A little different spin on it.
No. I love that. I've always, through kind of like my self-exploration, like of being kind of like, in a place of mental challenge during my PhD, I really did a lot of kind of like searching for, how can I reframe this? What can I control, an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. Right. And how can I, how can I in those situations be like, okay, I can't control that X is happening, but what can I control in order to continue to say push forward? And this is what I love absolutely about sport, like endurance sport, team sports, whatever it is it teaches you how to be, as long as you're learning the proper lessons, it teaches you how to be more resilient in real life. Oh,
totally. And that, hey, going back to my history with Outward Bound, that was the whole idea. That was, so all these wilderness, these rock climbs, these mountains, we climbed these rafts, these rivers we rafted. It was this metaphor for real life. And, part of what we would do is we would, talk about the transference to it. I was like, how does this play out in real life? What did you take away from this? And it's so powerful when people go, oh yeah, I could lead. I can speak in a group. I could do this. I could, wait a second. Yeah, I could do hard things, which I love, and they go back and do some amazing things sometimes.
No, I 100% agree. I did an Ironman back in 2012. And whenever my academic stuff started to get challenging, I'm like, that Ironman was probably the hardest thing mentally and physically you've ever had to do. And you were able to do that. So you should be able to do this as well. Yeah.
Or you can. It's different things.
Obviously,
I mean, and that's sometimes the challenge. Because there's a lot of people who can, we could run 100 miles, we could do Ironman, but when we get back to work, we're like, and so it's looking at what are those components. So if this could be a psychotherapy client of mine, it's like, hey, you're able to run 100 miles. You could run around the track really well. That there is an application to life, but we need to go, what are the other blocks? What are the things blocking you right now in life? What are, maybe there's, mental strategies, or maybe something else was going on that's impacting you right now. It could be a great metaphor.
It really, it's awesome. And so it sounds like one of the things you try to do first is figure out, like who the person is, what's going on in their life. Totally. and then you start to transition to figuring out, like what's blocking you, or what's maybe blocking that outflow of water from that bucket. Yeah. That's keeping things. So how, we obviously, this isn't a psychotherapy session or anything like that, but like, how do you actually determine stuff like that? Obviously it's questions and answers and other things like that, but
a lot of it is, so in a psychotherapy session, it's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of answers, and, and a lot of reflection, and really really, I think part of it is working with the individual to become more self-aware. What is it? What are those things that are maybe my thoughts, that are driving some of this behavior? Or what are these emotions that I may be responding to or reacting to that are driving it? So I like to think about things. I come from a perspective, I come from a couple different perspectives, but one I've really gravitated to is this modality called acceptance commitment therapy.
Okay.
And if I look at it, and I could almost like draw you a picture of two intersecting lines, and at the intersection is what I'd call a choice point. And that's where there's thoughts, feelings, and thoughts, feelings, and sensations. It could be a sensation of pain. It could be the thought that I'm no good at this. It could be, much darker thoughts. Okay. And one side of the intersection is my values, who I am, what I aspire to, what my goals are. And really underlying it is the values. And then on the other side is what I describe as away moves. It could be distractions. It could be behaviors that aren't working for me right now, like drugs, alcohol. It could be, if we're thinking about a race scenario, it could be dropping out of the race early. Just because I'm responding to those thoughts and feelings and sensations, all that other stuff. Now, here's the deal, is you can, open up to those thoughts, open up to those feelings. You don't have to feel perfect to lean into those values. Now, values, if you start leaning into something that you really want to do, you really want to behave this way, but there's this thing that's blocking you. There's always kind of two sides of it. There's this one side, it's like, yeah, this is going to be really great. But the other side is like, all this other stuff's going to come up for me. All these fears, anxiety, okay. So, I always think about, at Outward Bound, we'd dive off of cliffs or jump. No, we didn't dive. We'd jump off of some cliffs that were we picked out these cliffs that we knew the water was deep enough that people weren't going to hit their heads or anything. And jumping off of that, this is years ago, I was like, I can't do that. Now I know perfectly well that's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt myself. I can swim. I have this value of challenge, and I'm trying to lean into that value of challenge, but that fear is coming up, and that's pushing me around. How do you lean into that fear, lean into that discomfort? And it's powerful. It's powerful. And it happens to athletes in all sorts of different perspectives. I mean, it could be a cliff jumper, a cliff diver. It could be an ultra runner. It could be a cyclist who's, for me, for a while, mountain biking, riding fast downhill. It's still challenging, scary, Oh
yeah.
And it's like, what do I do? Okay. Well, wait a second. Here's some things I can go fast and just relax and just be present and just notice. Yeah, some of that's is that fear coming up, and that's normal. And going through that. So kind of gives you an idea. But yeah, I would gather that history. We'd look at and start developing that self-awareness of what are those thoughts, feelings, sensations, what are the behaviors, what are the things that I'm doing that's not helping me, or it's not working right now? What are the things that I can do? And maybe slowly get more comfortable doing that and leaning into those behaviors, leaning into that fear, opening up to the fear. This is where the acceptance comes from. This fear exists. How do I be compassionate with that? I'm normal. I've talked on another podcast about, I've tried to do this Leadville race series, the entire Leadman challenge, if you're familiar with this entire series in Leadville. I've never finished it. I finished the 100 run. I finished the 100 bike, all at separate times, but I haven't finished the entire series. And how do you lean into that, frustration of not finishing and still keep going? And that's the fun part. It's like, yeah, it's going to come up. You go. You find the ways to do it. So
I know it sounds so easy right?
Oh, God, no.
It's like it's like one of no like but one of my favorite quotes as of late is like what is simple is not easy.
Yeah.
Something along those lines, right? Because it sounds so simple. Let's just say
Yep.
that. It sounds so simple. It's like, oh yeah, just open yourself up to the fear.
Yep.
But if you have, I don't know, I'm 32, going to be 32. It's like if you have 32 years of practicing running away from that fear, it takes a long time to reprogram your brain to be like, all right, let's face it head on and let's take it on.
Exactly. And part of it is understanding where that fear comes from. And this is again, more self-awareness and digging into this, layer upon layer. You kind of think about layers of an onion. You're just digging into that. Where's that fear coming from? Fear is designed to protect you. It's coming from somewhere. That's why I'm normalizing it. There's the acceptance piece in that. Yeah, that exists. It is there. Anxiety is there to protect you. We want to make sure we don't step out of the cave and there is a saber-toothed tiger waiting for us there. We got to be ready for the saber-toothed tiger. So unfortunately, when we get to, where are we now? 2024, the saber-toothed tiger is not out there, but we still have these reactions and we still have that. And that's okay because it's still there to protect us. Even that whole fear of, a failure, of people noticing me not succeeding, fear of what other people think of me. That's it's innately programmed into us because we need to be part of the group. We need to be part of the group to survive. If you don't, then, hey, then you're out there, and this is millions of years ago, thousands of years ago, whatever, it's like you're not going to survive. But now that's not necessarily the case. You can, definitely in a lot of situations, okay, you're going to fail, and that's going to be okay. Let's move on and still grow. Yeah, and that's what they did as cave people too. I don't know.
No, I really like that because there's a book sitting behind me, and I don't think people can see it, but it's the Gifts of Imperfection, and that was something that was given to me by my PhD advisors when I was really struggling, getting work done in my PhD, because I always wanted, or I let the idea of perfectionism kind of get in the way of just like at least getting something done.
Yeah,
and that was probably one of the most valuable lessons that I had to learn over the course of 4 years, and I'm still trying to learn it, is that when, nothing's going to be perfect, but when you're striving for perfection, it really gets in the way of a lot of the things that you're trying to get accomplished. And it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, so you're not going to get that right now. As opposed to being like, well, and again, me unpacking the layers, right? There's a fear that when I turn in a paper to these people that I really, really respect, they're just going to bring it back and just think I am the worst, right? They're just going to be like,
rip that apart.
This guy is so stupid. We're going to drop him out of Oregon State University, and he's never coming back, right? It's like, and there was so there was that, and then it was like, well, or if I start to actually believe that I am capable of doing good work and knowing that, okay, what is there to learn from, failure or processes that you don't get the optimal outcome. And it's like, then it becomes kind of like this, it's kind of exciting. And there's kind of like this world of exploration where it's like, well, I'm fortunate to have these amazing researchers and scientists be looking at the papers and stuff and caring about what I am going to be submitting, and they want me to succeed. So it's a slight mindset shift, and it's so tough. It's so tough to actually implement it. But that's we were just talking off air, right, about the podcast stuff and the YouTube stuff and all of that.
Yeah,
and it's
that's exactly what I was thinking.
It's so easy to get wrapped up in well, I need the perfect video, and I need the perfect audio, and I need the perfect visuals, and all this sort of stuff. And it's or if you get 80% of the way there, people can still learn from it, and it's still going to be better than if nothing was released or nothing was done, right?
Is if I didn't say something to the world, okay, I just didn't say anything. No one gets to hear that. No one gets this opportunity, either for me or for you or anybody else, to provide that information to the world. Now, people could take what they want from that, and that's their choice. But we have that opportunity. I don't have to, have the perfect video. I don't have to have the perfect presentation. I'm saying, okay, what clothes am I going to wear today? Got to have my light over here. I got to have the good microphone, and I don't have to have any of that. And, and you just go for it and lean into that. And I think it's a normal struggle for everybody, but I think the more familiar you get with it, the more experience you get with it of just, hey, I'm just going to put this stuff out there, the easier it gets. But it takes work. But it takes work. We go back to that. We get back to that, hey, this isn't just something that's going to happen overnight. It's that progression, and it's not a linear progression. It's this, roller coaster, and it goes sideways sometimes. And it's great, and you got to be prepared. One thing that's been on my mind lately about all this, media, marketing, whatever, is be prepared to pivot. What can I, how can I, wait a second, I'm doing this. This doesn't seem to have the effect, or I don't really have the enjoyment in it that I would have hoped. And so I'm going to go over here. And do this. Be prepared to pivot, and that's for any athlete, any athlete or anybody,
I've been really thinking about this idea of plasticity or malleability or resilience or whatever you want to call it, but like being adaptable. That's like what it comes down to.
Yeah,
it's it's like you're trying. I think the people who are those individuals that are like the most successful, like the people who like a lot of us look up to are the most adaptable, because they've tried so many different things that like they're just like, oh well, that didn't work. Okay, I'm not going to spend a week mourning the fact that my reel didn't go viral, right? Because it's like yep, well, I've posted 1,000 reels. I'm on to the next one. And that's actually something. So I took it upon myself during my PhD when I was kind of having this like crisis of like, what the heck am I going to do with my life after this and other things like that. And I was like, I really want to start a physiology business, just talking about physiology and all that sort of stuff. And I don't urge people to go back to my initial posts, but you will find a great difference between my first post and my current post. But I don't know if I did every day, but I've been posting consistently on my physiology account now for like 2.5 years, where it's like I post 1 to 3 times per week.
Oh, that's great.
And I don't want to brag about the numbers, like, because it's not about the numbers, but just the practice of doing it, just like the practice of going out and running every day or the practice of cycling every day has gotten me so much better at being like, okay, well, this is something that I would want people to hear, and I would want to read myself. And, so be it if it goes viral, if it doesn't go viral. Like, it's great if it would result in 10,000 sales of something.
Right.
But if it doesn't, then, it's like at the end of the day, I still grew from, having that conversation or making that topic or interacting with those people. So it's really been a really good learning lesson for me.
It's powerful. Actually, I'm actually kind of probably in a similar vein, just kind of playing around with Instagram. And it was like, and I had this opportunity a week or two ago. There's a lot of therapists who do this Instagram, teach you about Instagram. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm maybe a step or two away from, the generation of Instagram, but I don't, but I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. And they gave these lessons. These challenges. You got to do one a day, and I'm doing some of these things and going, this is really silly. This is really silly. This is not me, but I'm going to do this. And I did it, and I was like, like one it's like, that's not me, and then I could do, things that I love, like writing about. I was, just a few minutes ago before we started, I was, doing a post on talking about pivoting, and it's like, that's something that resonates with me. Sometimes getting on a reel and showing my face, that could be okay with me too. But it's But I love what you said. It's trying all these different things, and hey, wait a second. Okay, let's pivot. Let's figure out what's working and get that experience. And I think there's anything that's in both my private, psychotherapy practice and mental performance practice, it's this whole idea of experience. You can't just sit here and talk about this. You have to experience it. If you're experiencing anxiety, there's going to be a time when you have to go towards the thing that makes you feel anxious. And that's critical, because if you don't, you're going to avoid it. You're not going to do it, and what happens when you start to experience it, you might be really anxious at first. You might be less anxious before, as you keep going into that, and you get better. Get better. Your mind slowly, the radio in the background the noise starts quieting down a little bit.
Yeah. No, this stuff is all stuff that I, have slowly had to learn over time, and it's, again, like, I think a lot of the times we want like quick fixes to really complicated matters. And, it's like when, so I'm thinking about the pivot idea, like I've really been kind of getting into like thinking about the wellness space and how we can use the principles of elite performance and apply that more to the wellness side of things. Because if you look at the health landscape and chronic diseases and all these other things that are popping up, it is, it's kind of like a dystopic wasteland right now, and it's only going to get worse. And so I've been thinking about, okay, well, how could I potentially use that and use my performance knowledge and pivot to, the wellness side of things. But I think a lot of people, when they start to get like to the point of, say, like chronic disease, the whole point of this story is, it's like you come in and you're like, oh my gosh, like I have type 2 diabetes. That's freaking scary.
Yeah.
But there's no pill. There's no like even like the surgeries, the pills that are out there, other things like that are going to solve that right now. It's you have been driving a ship for 30, 40 years in one direction, and it has become a cruise liner. And it is really, really hard to turn that ship and right that ship. But if you start practicing now, then you can start to incrementally right that ship over time. And that's with anything, right? That's whether you have chronic disease, if you're not happy with how much, if you're carrying excess weight, right? If you're not happy with, like your performance at work, if you're not happy with performance in your job, if you're not happy with performance in your family life, those sort of things. The good thing is we can all get better if we want, if we actually start to practice and want to.
Right, and it's looking back at that choice point that I described. So if you think about, okay, over here's my values. Do you value health and fitness? Okay, do you value health? Okay, what will it take for you to lean into that direction? Okay, well, this comes up for me. I can't do that. Okay, well, those are a lot of thoughts that are coming up, and part of working with someone is helping them to develop that motivation. Or to really kind of grasp onto that, okay, health is a value of yours. How, do you want to live, past 70, past 65? Right. It's like, okay, to be with you. Okay, do you also value being with your children, your grandchildren? Okay, oh yeah, and what are those other pieces? What are those other values that really resonate with you? Because maybe health and fitness, that doesn't resonate with a lot of people. But the other pieces do. Relationships, family, connection. Well, what happens when I don't, when I'm not focused on that, I'm just focused on, this other piece. Well, I got to take, so you see what I'm saying? It's kind of, yeah.
I think that's the value in self-exploration as well. Totally. Is figuring out, exactly what you said, figuring out what your values are, because then when you come to a fork in the road or a choice point, I love that.
Yeah.
You have something to lean on, and you have a defined set of, maybe not guidelines, but like guideposts, right? You say, okay, well, I'm getting terrible anxiety from this. And, it's like, okay, well, I could run away from it and, go do the avoidance technique, like take myself away from the world, maybe drink some alcohol, maybe, smoke marijuana, do something like that. Or you could say, okay, well, what is so scary about this? What is, in really kind of self-reflect, and then say, okay, well, it might be hard, but how do I lean into it according to my values? Do I value health? Do I value strong, healthy relationships? Okay, well, as opposed to avoiding that conversation or avoiding whatever it is that you're avoiding, you say, okay, well, time to have a tough conversation with, with my friend, with my spouse, with whoever it is. Time to really lean into, okay, well, for me, right, health matters so much. And I've kind of felt a little helpless in terms of, like the injuries and like all of that sort of stuff. So what I've been doing, and this is one of the things that I just love about this podcast, is I just get to have like amazing experts like yourself, coaches, people who have tried things and are like, oh yeah, well maybe you could try this. Cause I'm like, okay, I will almost try anything as long as it's not like gonna damage me and damage my health.
There you go.
So there's like things that I like have slowly been picking up, and I'm like, I'm essentially just reducing everything to square one. How do I make a good foundation for myself and build a resilient like body and body structures, and then I can start to get stronger, and then I can start to add on more endurance stuff. And it's like, so this has just been really, it's all a regression. I'm like regressing everything to the bare minimum, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to get good at the basics again. Okay, got to do mobility before you start working out. You got to, do strength work, and you got to be flexible enough and all that.
And you got to be okay with being able to be okay with that. It's like, okay, I'm doing, well, wait a second, maybe I do need to go back. I attended a coaches conference a month ago. And this was specifically designed for high school coaches, track and field coaches and cross country coaches. And, I almost forgot where I'm going with this, but, it was I apologize.
No, you're fine. So you attended coaches meeting for high school athletes.
Yeah, which is not a typical, I'm not a high school coach. I coach ultra runners, I coach marathoners, but I also look at it from the perspective of, okay, what are they also telling their athletes? What are they teaching their athletes? Here's where I was going with this. Sorry. It was, hey, what they're teaching their athletes, how to take care of their bodies. Are we doing the same thing over here as working with adults, when it comes to mobility, self-care, all this other stuff, which, in a lot of respects I am, I know I am, but it's, you start to think about that. And it's like, oh, wait a second. They put such an emphasis on this. This is how you're going to do a good warm up before you go out to a run. Am I assigning a run just, okay, go for an easy run, 15 minutes, and then go into, do some strides and go into that? Or am I saying, okay, let's work on some mobility first? What do you need to do to really perform? Now, that's really hard to integrate into an adult lifestyle. And you have, you're a track and field coach, you have an hour and a half after school. And so, you could integrate that stuff. But it was, what I was taking away was, okay, what are they telling these kids? So when I'm talking to these kids, how do I work with them? And then also, wait a second, why aren't we telling our athletes this too? This is important. This is important to, this is part of that self-care. Yeah, so, absolutely. I digress. Sorry.
No. I love that, because it's like somehow we become adults, and then everyone's just like, oh yeah, every adult has everything figured out. And they're just like, yeah, they'll know exactly what to do, like whatever. It's like, no.
No.
Like we don't. And unless you're reminded of kind of like the basics or like the things that need to be done, which is exactly kind of what I'm doing, is like taking a step back. I'm like, I really would like to develop my endurance performance potential right now, but I can't, I haven't been able to do strength training without tweaking my back. I haven't been able to do, like consistent training without tweaking my back or my hip or other things like that. So now I'm like, okay, well, I need to start to integrate those things that actually allow me to build that foundation. And then I will finally get to the point where I can start to build my endurance and my fitness back to where it is.
Totally.
The good news is, and I said this on another podcast, it's like, you can grow until the day you die.
Yeah.
So take that as an encouragement to say your internal locus of control. Yep. Yes, genetics play into account, like other things, like there are things that you cannot control.
Yep.
There are a ton of things that you can control, and you can continue to grow until the day you die. And that is the beauty of the human body is yes, processes slow down.
And your mind. And your mind.
And your mind.
Your mind. Like, it's you just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be set in those ways. You can pivot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can pivot. Yes. No, I love it. So before I let you go here, you said there was something right before I was like, okay, we have to start recording. You did, I think it was probably Leadville 100, right? The run.
Yeah. I've done the Leadville. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Could you maybe like walk us through maybe like a story of like your most challenging, say, like Leadville race, and then how you use the things that you preach to people to, maybe overcome it, or maybe you didn't overcome it, and then what'd you learn from it?
So I've done quite a few Leadville races, but I think one of the best ones, and it comes to mind, and I'm going to just say, there was a sports psychologist that phrased this: you could have a good shitty day. Okay. You could have a good shitty day, and you could have a lot of discomfort and move beyond that and just be open to that discomfort. Now, I've had some bad races where I've had to drop out, where just like, okay, this isn't working, or I've had, like maybe some hip issues where it was like my hip, I can't move my leg, it's not going anywhere, or I've not been able to get getting the nutrition I needed because I was getting really sick or something like that, and I wasn't able to go fast enough, which is a problem. You do have to move at a certain speed. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the best days that I had, which in getting a finish, was getting sick, being okay with that, keep going, getting sick again, and just kind of taking that moment to go, okay, this is not the best experience, but this isn't supposed to be the best experience. Mm-hmm. This is going to be uncomfortable. There's a lot of factors that are creating that. And let's just, open up to that. Open up to barfing all over, excuse the visual there, but it's like, this is going to happen. All right, what do I need to do to fix it? Fix it, mm-hmm. and then move. Keep moving forward, mm-hmm. In spite of all that stuff that's coming up for me. Now, there's other days where it's like, it just didn't come together because I just, I wasn't fast enough, mm-hmm. Or I'm disabled, and it's just, that's the way it is. But yeah, mm-hmm. I like just to remember you could have a good shitty day. And it's kind of mm-hmm. like what I've been talking about this entire time is like, you could feel anxious and still perform. You could still experience these emotions and still do what you love and lean into those values. Because sometimes those values, those things that you love, that they're going to bring up the most anxiety for you. Mm-hmm. Being open to that experience is going to help you move forward. And so, mm-hmm. Have a good shitty day.
Have a good shitty day. I'm going to start. I think that might start to have to be my my closing. Have a good shitty day, everybody.
Have a good shitty day.
That's awesome.
If I do my podcast, that's going to be mine. So.
I won't. If I do, I'll always have the little stars at the bottom
stars
of like Neil. Yeah. No, exactly. I love that, and I love thinking about kind of like the duality of everything in life, right? Like, without happiness or without sadness, there can't be happiness. Without, stress, there can't be relaxation, because you don't know, like you wouldn't know it if you were always in a stress situation. You wouldn't know what relaxation was.
There's a flip side of the coin. There's always a flip side of the coin, and you're going to have good with bad. And sometimes embracing the bad, you'll find the good underneath it. And embracing, I don't know, embracing discomfort. It sounds such like I don't use the term mental toughness. Notice I haven't said it the entire podcast, but it's having that psychological flexibility to go, all right, this is bad right now, but there's also the good that I'm trying to strive for right now. And that's there. So there you go.
Absolutely. No, Neil, I love talking about this sort of stuff, because I think for me personally, it has been something that I've been made aware of more recently in my life. And it's something that I personally have struggled with. And I think a lot of Americans, a lot of type A individuals, a lot of just individuals in general, struggle with this sort of stuff. So having, people on that, I think the normalization of it and talking about it and making it so it's not so taboo really helps other people realize, like, oh, that other person was going through a stressful situation. And it makes you feel more part of that group, right? Like we were talking about. And I think that is something I just greatly appreciate. And, not like you said, like the mental toughness thing, like you don't say mental toughness, you just now it's mental flexibility, because we're figuring out how to embrace, again, that duality, that like embrace the struggle, because perhaps happiness is on the other side of the wall. Or perhaps throwing up is on the other side of the wall. But at the end of the day, like I will say, the things that I've struggled with the most but kept going have been the most rewarding things in my life. And I think that's why a lot of people like to do the races, right? These like 100-mile races. Like, why the heck would anyone choose to do something like that on the weekend? Right? Like, it's like,
what are you doing
at the same time? And at the same time, it's like, no, there is reward in that struggle, and it just teaches you so much about yourself, and gives you hopefully the confidence to say, okay, well, that was really, really tough, but I've learned so much from that, and now how do I take that and how can I apply that to different aspects of your life so you can just be more resilient, more flexible, those sort of things. So
exactly. That's beautiful. That's exactly it. And that's
So is there any like takeaways, or like, one big thing that people could do starting today that will help them to get more resilient, more mentally flexible, so the next time they face something challenging, they can start to
I'm assuming a lot of listeners are athletes, just kind of the nature of the game here is if you're not already taking notice of what you're thinking during your workout, or before your workout or after your workout, what are you saying to yourself? You could note it down if you use like something like Training Peaks, note it down there. Or if you're just a journal, hey, weather was fine, ran 3x800, 4, whatever it is, and noticed my mind was over here. Now it could be neutral, it could be helpful thinking, or it could be maybe something unhelpful that was pushing you around a little bit. Sometimes there's overly helpful thinking that I need to run faster, or are you telling yourself rules? Are you saying I must do this or I should do this? These are rules. These are imperatives that may come from somewhere that may not have a basis in what in your actual performance. You don't. You shouldn't. If you're saying those things, note them. Just becoming self-aware is going to help you take the next step to, once you start catching those thoughts pushing you around, you start addressing them and refocusing on, hey, those things that we can control, our process. Okay, what can I control right here? So self-awareness first. So that's the first thing I would do. Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. So everybody, if you haven't practiced this sort of stuff before, really, I highly recommend, just observing yourself. Like it's simple, but it's not easy. Observe yourself. It's like, how do you talk to yourself? How do you go about your day? Is most of the time is your mental self-talk, is it super negative? Because I definitely know people who have extremely negative self-talk, and it reflects in a lot of their actions. I also know people who are just like the most positive people in the world, and it reflects in their actions. So, so it's just becoming aware of that. Yeah. And then from there, then you can start to, like what you were talking, like the crossing point, that choice point, you can start to become aware of every time I reach a choice point, am I running away from this? And maybe what are the underlying reasons? What are my coping mechanisms? Or do I now have values that I can start to build my structure on so that it gets easier and easier to go to the correct direction?
Love it.
Every time you reach a choice point.
Exactly. And notice, even if you're moving away, sometimes avoidance is, and it's not necessarily avoidance. It's what's workable right now. The thing that ask yourself, is this workable? Is this workable in the long run? If I want to go over here and do this, 100-mile run, is me sitting down right now helping? Or is thinking about injury, is me running right now helping me? Or is this kind of an avoidance move? Or even, I would even go to a point of denial that there actually is an injury.
Right.
And, so is this workable right now? I think that's a question to really ask. Because you can, sitting down, watch a marathon of Netflix, that's not too bad. But if it's starting to become unworkable, then it's a problem.
Yep. So. If that is the thing you do every single night, right, is the marathon of Netflix.
And it's, you're hey, wait a second. I'm doing this because I'm not,
right.
I'm not, I don't want to do this other thing.
Yeah.
So.
No, right. and I think too, if you do struggle with all of this sort of stuff, hire yourself a great psychotherapist and mental health professional who can help walk you through those tools, because I definitely did some counseling when I was, doing my PhD, and that is probably one of the major differences between, how my mindset shifted. So yeah, and so I'm a huge proponent of, like your line of work, Neil. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I will just caution people, it does take time to find a person that you can talk to, open up to, feel comfortable with. So don't feel like, you need to just pick somebody and just like go with them. Like
totally.
It's
totally. It takes work. And that's, here in Colorado, if you're here in Colorado, I offer, 10, 15 minute free consultation if you want to call me, or, I even do Zoom calls with folks just to, because it works for me too. There's two sides of the street. It has to, you have to have this connection. If it's not connection, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
And so if you can't, force you force it to happen. You can't, you can't force any kind of relationship to happen. Yeah. So, interview them. If they're not willing to, you're not willing to give you a few minutes to talk to them a little bit, move on to the next.
Yeah.
Move on to the next.
Awesome. Well, Neil, I wasn't expecting this for our conversation to go,
okay.
Like all the ways that it went, but it was absolutely amazing to talk to you. I'm hoping, at some point, either you're starting up a podcast and I can get on and we can talk about stuff a little further. You can get back on. Maybe I have a feeling there's probably going to be, people asking questions about, like more of like the, application side of things. So
sure.
If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to reach out?
The best way to reach out to me is my website, and it's a long one. It's Colorado Psychotherapy and Sport. So that's www.coloradopsychotherapyandsport.com. And then from there you can go to my contact. Let me know you've heard the podcast too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Phil. This was great. I honestly didn't know what to expect, and I love answering these questions. I love digging into it, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on again. And as always, you guys can find me Critical02. So if you have any questions about this, but can't find Neil for some reason, I can put you guys in touch, or you can just ask me those questions and. If I can help to guide the answer, I will. But if I don't feel comfortable with it, I will definitely point you towards a professional. What was the saying? Have a shitty good day.
Have a good shitty day.
Have a good shitty day.
Have
everybody.
a good shitty day. Yeah, have a good shitty.
See ya.
Bye.